Hello everybody, Codemaster0 here, bringing you another video. This time my first video for Dark Souls 2. It's gonna be the first video of many that I do for this game, and so I hope you guys are ready. Cause here it comes. A lot of videos for this game on my channel. Yeah. For this video I'll be going over all of the different attributes as well as stats, everything that you see on the player status page in game. Now you might think that you know everything about the game, or you might have known everything about the stats in Dark Souls 1, but there have been a significant amount of changes, and so even if you think you're an expert, well, we'll see. So first off, I'm going to talk about your basic attributes. You guys probably recognize a lot of these from Dark Souls 1, but a few of them are different or new. So first off, we've got Vigor. Increasing your Vigor will raise your maximum HP, which, as you may imagine, is very useful. Other stats also increase HP, but only slightly, not nearly as much as you will gain from increasing your Vigor stat. Vigor also increases your natural petrify resistance, which I'll go over a little bit more in a bit. Note that early in-game, increasing Vigor provides much more survivability than increasing Vitality to wear heavier armor. But at high armor upgrade levels and high HP levels, Vitality can actually become more beneficial than Vigor. Your second attribute is Endurance. Increasing your endurance will raise your maximum stamina. Maximum stamina. Yes. This will allow you to attack more times in succession, block more attacks without resting your guard, roll more often, and run further without completely draining all of your endurance. Or stamina. Endurance will also increase your physical defense. This will help you take more hits in melee without dying. This is more valuable for heavy armor users than light armor users, as heavy armor typically scales a lot more with physical defense than light armor does. Endurance also has an interactive effect with adaptability, another attribute that I'll get to in a second. Your next attribute is Vitality. The primary effect of Vitality is to increase your equip load. Equip load, as you can probably figure, is the maximum amount of weight that your character can carry on him at one time, or have equipped. This determines how fast your character can move or roll. For example, if your equipment load is 40 and you equip only a dagger, you'll have an equipment ratio of 1.3%, which means you're only using up 1.3% of your maximum equipment load. This will cause you to roll very fast. But then say you equip something heavier like a giant warrior club, you'll have an equip ratio of about 75%, which will make you roll slowly. Now, while a lot of you guys probably remember how it worked in Dark Souls 1, where if you were under 25%, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but you would do a fast roll. And if you got to 50%, you would have a slightly slower roll, and if you got over that point, you'd have what's called the fat man's roll. And then, if you had 100%, well, you just did not move. In Dark Souls 2, it works a little bit smoother in terms of, as you scale up in that percent, it won't have as significant of a change. What I mean is that if you're at 25% in Dark Souls 1, you're fine, you're doing the fast roll. But if you were to go 1% higher, you'll instantly see this big drop off. That doesn't happen in Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 2, it scales a little bit smoother from 1% all the way up to 70%. The biggest drop off that you will see is at 70.1%, when you'll notice that you'll slow down quite a bit. And in this game, if you reach 120%, it'll be about equal of what your 100% equipment load was in Dark Souls 1, meaning that you probably just won't move very fast at all. The next attribute is Attunement. Attunement determines how many spell slots you have. Spell slots are required to equip things such as sorceries, miracles, pyromancies, and hexes, hexes being new to Dark Souls 2. It also highly increases your cast speed, more so than intelligence, which you'll hear about in a second. So this attribute is pretty important if you're planning on doing something that focuses either on sorceries, miracles, pyromancies, yada yada yada. If you're doing something as like maybe a warrior, but you want to have a couple spells with you, then go ahead and raise it up, but other than that, you won't need to raise it very high. Strength. Strength is one of your primary melee damage stats. All weapons require some amount of strength in order to be used effectively. Some require a small amount, and some require quite a bit. Now, like I said, strength does affect your melee damage, but what you'll find is that different weapons scale differently with each attribute. We'll take this fire longsword, for example. If you look in the bottom left corner, you'll see the bicep thing, the massive bicep, which of course represents your strength, and then the hand representing your dexterity. This means that the requirement to wield this sword is 10 strength and 9 dexterity. But then you look below it and you see a green bicep. Apparently it's Hulk this time. Yeah. And you see the letter C, and then you see the dexterity symbol with the letter D. And then of course, on this specific sword, since it has fire damage, you also see B next to the fire symbol. This is how the weapon scales with that specific attribute. Meaning for strength, its scaling is C. For dexterity, it's D. The scaling grade goes all the way down from that little dash that you'll see next to like the lightning symbol, which means that it doesn't scale at all. From there it goes E, being the very lowest scaling, D being low scaling, C, average, B, and then A, and then S. S being the best scaling possible. If you see a weapon with S, say next to strength, it's very beneficial to have that weapon out if you have a high strength level, or if you plan on putting a lot of points into strength, because that's how you get the maximum damage from that weapon. Whereas if you get a weapon that has, say, E for strength, it's not really smart to have that weapon out and get your strength to 50, because it's not going to make too big of a difference. The better the scaling is with that specific stat, the more damage bonus you will receive with that weapon for each attribute level, if that makes sense. Say I have 10 strength, and the scaling here is C, and then I increase my strength to say 20, and it goes to, let's just say 20 for right now. But if I had strength scaling S, S of course being the best scaling, when I went from 10 to 20 strength, the damage would go from 10 to say 40. So it's definitely very beneficial to get weapons that have good scaling, especially later in the game. Dexterity. Dexterity is the other main melee damage stat. Just like strength, your weapons also require a specific amount of dexterity to be usable. Unlike with strength, holding a weapon in two hands does not help you meet the dexterity requirement. You'll notice that sometimes that, let's say, your strength requirement for a big two-handed sword is 20. As long as you have 10 strength, you can two-hand that weapon and then use it effectively. Whereas if you only one-hand it, and then you try swinging with it, you'll find that you'll just bounce off and it moves kind of slow. The next attribute is adaptability. This one is also new to Dark Souls 2. Now this stat's a little bit more in depth than all of the other ones. First off, adaptability also raises HP slightly, as you've probably noticed that all of the other stats do as well. It also increases your poison bonus slightly, which means that if you use a poison infused weapon, you'll get a small offensive bonus from adaptability. On the defensive side, adaptability will also raise your status resistance against poison. In terms of defense, adaptability also raises all of your status resistances. So if you put points into adaptability, you'll become more resistant to things like poison, bleed, petrify, and curse. Meaning that it's harder for an opponent to make you become poisoned. Bled? Bleeding? Harder to make you bleed? Yes. Petrify you or curse you. Adaptability's primary effect, though, is to raise your agility. Now it says here that agility boosts the ease of evasion in other actions, which means that this allows you to do things like drinking Estus faster. If you've noticed that when you drink Estus, your character stands in place, but if you do things like consuming a life gem, you kind of walk slower. Apparently, increasing your agility will make it so that you walk faster. This can be useful in things like maybe PvP if you really want to be the guy that heals up mid-fight. Jerk. But other than that, I don't see much benefit to it, at least not beneficial enough to where I would spend points going after agility instead of, for that reason other than, spending it in endurance or some other preferred stat. Now I mentioned earlier that endurance has an interactive effect with adaptability. Now what this one is that leveling both of them can create natural poise. So you might be wondering what poise is. Poise is an attribute that you might not know too much about or even noticed it unless you kind of paid attention. But you'll notice that if you're wearing lighter armor and you get hit by an enemy, your character sort of staggers back. Whereas maybe if you have heavy armor on and your character gets hit, he's unaffected and can keep moving in the direction he was. So raising the two stats at the same rate will give you natural poise. For example, if you have 10 adaptability and 10 endurance, adding 1 point to endurance will not increase your poise, but if you have 11 of adaptability and 10 in endurance, adding 1 more point to endurance will increase your poise. So if they're both 12, there's an extra point. If they're both 13, there's a point, and so on. Intelligence. Intelligence increases the power of your sorceries by increasing your magic bonus. It also slightly impacts your cast speed, which is different from Dark Souls 1 where your dexterity was actually found to increase spellcasting speed, but that seems to have been dropped, and now that relies entirely on intelligence, as well as attunement. Attunement, of course, will give you more casting speed per point, though. Now, the way that intelligence works is pretty much the same, but there's something a little bit different that I noticed. So first off, of course, this stat is very useful for someone who desires to be a sorcerer, or sorcerer, rather, or someone of, spellcasting. But you might want to note this part. Each point of intelligence from 10 to 20 gives massive returns in magic bonus, meaning each one of those points will give you a large number of magic bonus increase. But as you hit 20, and as you start to level over that, the returns that you get from leveling it up each time does not give you as much magic bonus. For example, increasing your intelligence from 10 to 20 makes your magic bonus go from 53 to 106, but increasing your intelligence from 20 to 30 only makes your magic bonus go from 106 to 110. But then again, it seems to pick up a bit after that point. From 30 to 40, it goes from 110 to 140. From 40 to 50, 140 to 155. 50 to 60, 155, 162. 60 to 70, yada yada yada. So if you're wanting to increase the power of your sorceries a good amount but don't really feel like spending all of your points in intelligence, then I recommend just going up to about 20, at least to start with, because that's how you'll get the biggest portion of your magic bonus, and you haven't spent too many points yet. Here's something else that's also new to Dark Souls 2. Intelligence also contributes to your fire bonus, along with faith. Raising either faith or intelligence will slightly increase your fire bonus, but this is not an interactive effect such as the endurance and adaptability. You can level one or the other and still get the boost. In order to get a dark bonus, however, you will need to level up both intelligence and faith. This one works just the same way as adaptability and endurance did. Intelligence also impacts your magic, fire, and dark defenses, so having these boost will kind of help you out when you're fighting other spellcasters. Do note though that intelligence does not actually provide any sort of physical defense. Stay away from those warriors, or those thieves, or those bandits. Melee, don't do it. And finally, your last stat is faith. The primary effect of faith is to increase your lightning bonus. Like intelligence, it also impacts cast speed. Lightning bonus is a bonus that you receive when using a weapon like, let's say, a straight sword that has lightning damage on it. The higher your faith, the higher your lightning bonus. The higher your lightning bonus, the more that lightning attribute does from that sword. So say it does 110 damage normally. Increasing your faith can increase the amount of damage that lightning contributes to your attack. Now I'll go over a little bit of what you see under the performance part of this chart. HP, of course health points, is pretty self-explanatory. The higher HP, the higher your health bar is. That's your maximum amount of health point. Stamina is that little green bar that you see under the red, and that determines of course how much you can roll, swing, run, all of that stuff, block. Equipment load we talked a little bit about already, and so that's my maximum equipment load that you see there. Where you see slot, that's the amount of slots that you have for equipping sorceries or miracles and all that stuff. I currently have 0 because I only have 2 attunement, because I am not of the magic type, or faith, miracle, hex, any of those. Yeah. Cast speed, that is my cast speed, which is affected by the stats that I listed earlier, the attributes that I listed earlier, being intelligence and faith, depending on what your build is. Attack strength, of course, is just the bonus that you receive in attacking melee from your strength attribute. Attack dexterity is, of course, the dexterity portion. Magic bonus is what we talked about in terms of intelligence, where the higher your intelligence is, the higher your magic bonus, and that adds damage to when you're doing sorceries and stuff like that. Fire bonus, of course, is the same thing, but in terms of pyromancies. Lightning bonus is the thing affected by faith, such as lightning weapons and all of that. Dark bonus is the bonus that you'll receive when doing any sort of dark damage. Poison bonus, of course, for any poison damage. Bleed damage. And now for the defenses. Physical defense we talked about, and of course that number right there just benefits your physical defense, so this means any sort of melee weapons, or melee damage. Magic defense is your defense against things like sorceries, spells, magic weapons, anything like that. Well, if it's a magic melee weapon, then the magic portion of the damage will rely on your magic defense, whereas the melee portion will go to your physical defense, so make sure you know exactly what you're up against. Fire defense is just your defense against pyromancies, or like I said with the melee weapon, if it's a fire weapon, and it's a fire melee weapon, then you need to know exactly what you're up against. Lightning defense, it's the same thing as the other two really, just lightning now. Dark defense, same thing. Poison resistance is just your resistance against poison, which adaptability would raise, making it harder for you to be poisoned. Bleed resistance, same thing. Petrify resistance, same thing. Curse resistance, same thing. And then of course, agility, which we went over back in the adaptability section of this video. Now, poise. Poise is the stat that I talked about earlier that determines if your character will be staggered by a blow or anything like that. This number right here is the amount of poise that you gain from your stats, whereas the poise that you see to the right is the poise that you receive from your armor. And now for right weapon, left weapon, and defense. The first thing you see listed under right weapon is R weapon 1. This just means the first weapon that you have for your right hand. As you know, you can equip 3 weapons in your right hand, 3 weapons in your left hand. Now, R weapon 1, and it says 261 for me, that number right there is how much damage I will do with my right-handed weapon, taking into consideration all of my attributes and stats. Of course, this doesn't mean that's exactly how much damage you will do each blow. That's gonna vary depending on what you hit. R weapon 2, same thing, and R weapon 3, I actually don't have anything equipped, so that would actually be my unarmed attack. Left weapon is exactly the same thing, but you can see that that tower great shield I got, it's gonna deal a good blow. Now under defense we see VS strike, VS slash, and VS thrust, and of course poise. Those are the bonuses that you receive from your armor, but it's already added up the additional bonus that you receive from any sort of stats. So you see here that my poise right here is 32.4, and you see to the left that it's 0.9. 32.4 minus 0.9 is the additional poise that I receive just from the armor, but plus the 0.9, 32.4 is my total overall poise. The same thing goes for the VS defenses above me. Well guys, I think that about does it for this video. I hope that you found some of the information, if not all of it, very helpful or some helpful, in your quest to defeat this dark, cruel, unforgiving world. If you did find this video helpful, please do consider leaving a like, maybe a comment, and maybe even subscribe if you'd like to support me and if you'd like to be notified of future videos, which, of course, I will be making. And if you guys have been following me since Dark Souls 1, you know I like to make a lot of videos for this game. A lot of guides, a lot of helpful tips and info, maybe some playthroughs, we'll see what happens. But for now, peace, and all sorts of things. And so, I wanted to make a little video to let you guys know what's up. And for as to where I've been, I guess the best answer would be around America. But for reals guys,